First of all, happy Mother's Day to everybody, and especially happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. But that being said, let us now begin the review as the final game have just finished about 10 minutes ago. And this week, there seems to be a little bit of a power shift in terms of these inter-conference matchups. So, you know how this season, with all the inter-conference matchup between Western Conference team and Eastern Conference team in a match, it's always been the Western Conference team that's been able to get a win. This week, however, it seemed like the East basically flipped the script, and it seemed like this week, 5 of the 6 West versus East kind of inter-conference matchup, the East was able to win. But we start off with the first match, which is not a inter-conference matchup, but it is a Cascadia clash kind of matchup between the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Portland Timbers, where the Whitecaps was able to get a 1-0 win over the Timbers, and now they take an early lead in the Cascadia Cup standings. But if you look at this game and if you watch this game, you would know that this should have been more than just 1-0, and that it is I'm kind of bewildered the fact that there was only one goal in this game. And I'm pretty sure if you're a Portland Timber fan, you're probably bewildered the fact that your team didn't score a goal in this game, because they had so many chances in this game to score, especially what happened in the second half. But in the first half, Freddie Montero scores from Talbot to make it 1-0 in favor of Vancouver. Vancouver could have made it 2-0. After that, they had a couple of decent chances to make it 2-0. They don't do that. And then in the second half, Portland basically took over. And this has been something that I've been seeing with the Whitecaps, especially when they're playing at home, where whenever they get that 1-0 lead, they tend to kind of sit back and just absorb all the pressure, and they try to catch team on the counterattack. And in this game, they did exactly that, and at times it was very successful with the way that they basically counterattacked the Timbers, and they really kind of caught the Timbers by pushing too many men forward. But man, at times they were relying on a lot of just... They really wrote their luck in this game, and they really also have to thank their goalkeeper in this game, where Maxime Kripo, he basically stood on his head in this game. But it's also, they also have to kind of thank the Timbers of the fact that they missed so many chances. And these weren't just any misses. These were just horrendous misses. Misses that is like in the 18-yard box, and there was just a couple of times when Valeri Blanco missed just a absolute sitter in the box that I don't know how in the world they would miss. Like 9 out of 10 times, most of those guys, especially Blanco and Valeri, would put that one away, and yet they didn't put it away in this game. And it just seemed like this was just one of those games where the Timbers, no matter how good the chances, they just cannot put the ball in the back of the net. And that was the case in this game, and that was the final score of this game, as Vancouver was able to hang on to that 1-0 victory. And in terms of the shots in this game, it will basically tells you how much Portland had in terms of their chances, and that they were just putting a shooting gallery in front of the Vancouver net. They had 27 shots compared to 12 that Vancouver had. I think that's the most shots so far by any team in a game this season, and yet 27 shots, none of them actually went into the back of the net. Now, they only have 5 shots on goal compared to 3, so a lot of those shots were kind of off target, but some of those were just very, very close from actually hitting the target. They had 15 shots off target compared to 5 that Vancouver had, 7 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Vancouver had, and 51% possession compared to 49% possession that Vancouver has. And yeah, I mean, if you're a Timber fan, this has to be a very frustrating loss, because, you know, they definitely did enough to at least deserve a point or even get all 3 points in this game, and they had just so many good opportunity in the second half to basically put the ball into the back of the net. But as the old saying goes, if you don't put the ball into the back of the net and you're not being clinical, then this is exactly what happens. So yeah, for the Timbers, they're going to have to move on from this, and just got to accept that it was just one of those days where nothing kind of goes right with them. And as for the Whitecaps, you know, yes, you're happy with this victory, but there's got to be a point where you cannot just keep relying on the fact that when you score first at home, you can just let your foot off the gas and kind of just defend and hope for the best. It has happened a couple of times this season. It happened in this game, it happened in the LAFC game, and it definitely happened in the Philly game. And 2 of those 3 games, they've been pretty successful. But in that Philly game, you saw how they were trying to do the same method. They got burned in that game, and they could have easily got burned in this game too. So, yes, I understand that when you have a 1-0 lead and you're playing a stronger team, you need to try and defend that. But you don't just, especially when you're at home, you don't just like sit back and just absorb all the pressure and think that that is going to be the way that you're going to win the game. And especially giving up so many blatant chances that the other team should have probably put away. That's definitely not a recipe in terms of having a good season and winning games. But moving on, in the next match is FC Cincinnati. They done it. They finally ended the goal drought in this game, and it only took them 7 minutes to end their goal drought, which was at 505 minutes coming into this game. But 7 minutes later, Alan Cruz scores from Maddox to give Cincinnati the first goal that they have scored in over 512 minutes to be exact. And you know what? Cruz, he actually hit that one off the post and it bounced in, and he was very fortunate by that. But still, at the end of the day, Cincinnati finally scored a goal in this one, and then they, of course, got the 1-0 lead. Now, in the 39th minute, there was a very controversial goal that was called off because of an offside. So originally what happened in this incident was when the ball was played to Lovett, it looked like Lovett was onside. But apparently when they look at VAR, Lovett was in an offside position. And there's been times where I try to freeze frame it and to see whether or not if Lovett was actually onside. And when I look at it, it looked like he was onside. And it wasn't even close. It looked like he may be about a yard or 2 onside, and that, you know, this was just one of those incidents where VAR clearly got it wrong, and I'm pretty sure Montreal fans is going to be very up in arms of this. And I just had a feeling if this is going to be a 1-goal game, yeah, this is going to be the goal that everybody's going to be talking about at the end of the game, and that if that goal counted, then Montreal would have at least got a point out of this game. But in the second half, Alache scores from Lamar and Berton. Always happy to see Fatai Alache score a goal, even if he does not play with the Quakes anymore. So at that point, it was 2-0, and then Montreal basically kind of took over the game. Cincinnati, they kind of did what Vancouver did to Portland, where they were just sitting back and trying to absorb the pressure, but they did give up a goal in the 75th minute. Okawanko scores from Urruti to make it 2-1 in favor of Cincinnati. And then late on in the game, Jackson Hamill had a one-on-one opportunity with Spencer Ritchie, and unfortunately, Hamill basically hit straight to Ritchie, and that clearly probably should have been the second goal. And I thought for sure that was the equalizer for Montreal, but you know, Ritchie, he does a good job to make that big save in that one-on-one situation, and that of course is the final score of this game, as Cincinnati of course finally not only ended their goal drought but also ended their losing streak. And in terms of the shots in this game, Cincinnati only had 6 shots compared to 10 that Montreal has, 2 shots on goal compared to 3 that Montreal has, 2 shots off target compared to 5 that Montreal has. Both teams had 2 shots, and in terms of possession wise, 55% for FC Cincinnati compared to 45% for Montreal. And I think when you look at this game, it seemed like what has changed in this game is that it feels like FC Cincinnati, they're no longer just kind of sit back and just kind of absorb the pressure and not really just kind of hold on to the ball. The new interim manager of FC Cincinnati, which I believe his name was Johan Damme, I think that's his name. It seemed like he kind of changed that style where instead of them just being afraid to like have the ball and keep possession, they basically decided to do that in this game where they're not afraid to hang on to position, and they're not afraid that if they lose possession, then they of course would kind of be in a bad situation. So I think that's been kind of the issue when Alan Koch was managing this team, is that this team, they just set back way too much, and that they just don't like they don't get onto the ball and they don't hold on to the possession long enough before just give it back to the other team. So yeah, we'll see if this is kind of a effective tactics that FC Cincinnati can do. And as much as I know FC Cincinnati, of course, get this win, and I know that many people say, well, it seemed like the interim manager is doing a good job right now, and maybe we should think about getting his job. And this is something that I always see whenever an interim coach come in, where usually his first game, he usually is going to get that win because the players are kind of more energetic and they're playing with kind of more emphasis because of the fact that there's a new coach coming in and they want to impress that new coach. So yeah, that's what FC Cincinnati was the case in this game. And also the fact that the opposition coach have no book in terms of the new interim manager. They don't know what exactly is he going to do with the team, whether if it's the same thing that the manager that got fired is going to be doing with the interim manager, or is he going to just completely change it up? And in this case, he basically completely changes up. But as for Montreal, yes, it's a frustrating loss, and yes, that goal that in the 39th minute, Montreal fans are always going to point that out as the goal that should have probably counted and that they should have got a point out of this game. But then again, late in the game, they should have got the equalizer from Jackson Hamill. That was just one-on-one of the goalkeeper. You got to finish that and potentially tied the game right there. But that being said, let's move on into the next game, is Dallas. I have some concern with Dallas because this is now, 3 straight games that they have lost? Or actually, no. Is it 3 straight games? No, it's 3 straight games that they have dropped points. I remember they lost last week. And then they, of course, drew to the Quakes the previous week. But I do have some concern with this Dallas team because it just feels like the attack is just not clicking whatsoever. And I remember how earlier in the season where I said it seemed like this team are kind of like last season where there's always going to be that one guy that's going to be stepping up for this team and scoring goals. Well, we saw what happened in the second half of the season last year when they don't have that one guy that eventually will step up and scoring the goal. Then they go into a kind of a goal drought. And that is something I think Dallas is kind of suffering right now too. But for the Red Bulls, in the 13th minute, Cassia Jr. scores from Ivan to make it 1-0 in favor of the Red Bulls. Then Ferreira did get the equalizer right on the stroke of halftime from Hayes to make it 1-1 in this game. In the second half, Nealis scores from Morello, and I believe that's Nealis' first goal with the Red Bulls, which, that's just so Red Bulls with the way that they always tend to have guys that comes into this team, and he always score his first goal in his debut. Now, I'm not sure if Nealis was his debut or whether if this is actually his first goal, but if it is, then it is basically a typical kind of Red Bulls kind of game where guys come in from the academy, playing the first game with the Red Bulls, they score on their debut. And then Brian White basically put the game away for Fernandez to make it 3-1, and that is the final score of this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, Dallas actually had more shots in this game. They had 15 compared to 9 that the Red Bulls had. 5 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Red Bulls had. 6 shots off target compared to 3 that the Red Bulls had. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Red Bulls had. And possession-wise, 65% possession compared to 35% that the Red Bulls had. So, for the Red Bulls, it's a good bounce-back win for them, and that they have now won 3 out of the 4 games. I don't know if they're kind of back and kind of like doing what Atlanta is doing, which is started to kind of get back to the level that they were last season and started to create a little bit of a resurgence after a poor start. But 3 wins out of the last 4 games is definitely not something that you should not take note that they are thinking and starting a kind of a resurgence and comeback in terms of rising up the table. And as for Dallas, like I said, I have a lot of concern in terms of this team, just the lack of scoring and the lack of attack that this team has. And obviously a lot of that has to do with Paxton Palmico not being there. But, when Paxton Palmico is there, and if this Dallas team continue to struggle, then yeah, there's definitely going to be a little bit or a lot of concern with Dallas in terms of them going forward this season. But that being said, let's move on into the next game, which is Philly. How about the Union? They just cannot stop winning right now as they won 2-1 against TFC in this game. In the first half, Mavinga scores an own goal, and basically this was a ball that was played toward the middle, and I forgot which. There was like a Union player and Mavinga kind of go for the ball. I think that was Fafa Pico that was going for that little kind of low cross into the box, and as both guys was going to try to get the ball, unfortunately Mavinga of course took the touch and puts it into his own end. I mean, originally when you look at it, it looked like Fafa Pico kind of scored, but it was last touch off of Mavinga, and that's why it was an own goal. And this is all because of the fact that the TFC defense, they did not do a good job in terms of they let that cross come into the box, and I believe it was Laurent Simon that just basically he should have not let that low cross coming in. He should have blocked that low cross coming into the box, and that shouldn't have been a chance for the Union. But they leads at 1-0 at that point, and then in the second half, Pozuelo scores from an absolute beauty of a free kick. I mean, this was kind of remind me of Sebastian Giovinco when he takes free kick where it's a free kick for about 22 yards out, and sometimes Giovinco basically just kind of chip it over the wall and puts it in the perfect spot. It was the same case here with Pozuelo, a very kind of Giovinco-esque free kick of him just kind of dank it over the wall and then puts it into a perfect spot that the Union goalkeeper had absolutely no chance in terms of saving that. And then after that, TFC really started to take control of the game, and I thought for sure that maybe they're going to get that go-ahead goal. But the Union kind of caught TFC off of a bit of a sucker punch because Montreal scores from Shabilko to make it 2-1 in favor of the Union. And after that point, TFC never found that momentum that they had after Pozuelo scored that free kick goal. And that was the final score of this game. And even though when they did bring Josie Altidore into this game, they didn't really kind of have a lot of attack, and he wasn't really in this game. But then again, Altidore, he just came back from an injury. You can't really say that he didn't, even though he didn't make a lot of impact, that it feels like this TFC team is just not doing very well, no matter if Altidore is in this team or not. But in terms of the shots in this game, TFC had 11 shots compared to 9 that the Union has, 4 shots on goal compared to 5 that the Union has, 4 shots off target compared to 2 that the Union has, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Union has, and the Union had 44% possession compared to 56% possession that TFC had. And like I said, for the Union, they just cannot stop winning right now. I mean, that's now 5 straight wins that the Union had, and they're firmly sit atop of the Eastern Conference right now. Well, actually not firmly sitting atop of the Eastern Conference. I believe they're still tied with DC in terms of that top spot. But yeah, it's clear that the Union, they are a very dangerous team right now. And remember how last year I was one of those few people that defended Jim Curtin and said that he's been doing a very good job, and a lot of people just been slating and criticize of the fact that he's not doing a good job with the Union. Look what happened this year. Look how much of a good job that Jim Curtin has done with this team, and I think it is time where credits have to give to Jim Curtin, and credit just have to be credit due in terms of what he's been doing this season. And knowing that he's under so much pressure this season because of the fact that he's only signed a 1-year extension and that he needs to get this team to the next level with a new system, and now it has worked perfectly throughout the season. Yeah, I got to give a lot of credit to Jim Curtin of the way that he's been managing this team, and he could definitely be an early candidate in terms of the coach of the year. But as for TFC, it's another frustrating loss, and again, the defense in this game was not good whatsoever. I mean, this is something that TFC have to fix if they want to go into the playoffs and maybe make a deep run, because the defense, the attack is definitely there, but the defense is what is holding this team back in terms of them being competitive in the Eastern Conference. But moving on, in the next match is NYCFC. So they're another team that just cannot stop winning, and just for whatever reason they just cannot stop this season in terms of not losing whatsoever. And now I believe that's 7 games unbeaten for NYCFC ever since Domai Turin said that he was under pressure. And in this game, they of course beat the Galaxy 2-0. And in the first half, the Galaxy thought that they scored the first goal, but it was called back because of an offside decision. Zlatan, of course, scored the goal. And, the thing that made me a little bit ticked off about this offside call is that the linesman waited so long to raise the flag. Like, originally that offside was like way back into the attacking phase, and the fact that the referee waited so late in terms of raising his flag, like almost 5 to 10 seconds before raising his flag. I mean, I understand that now with VAR, and I know now with linesmen, they've been taught with the fact that if you're unsure whether or not if it's an offside, you should basically put your flag down, and we can always look back on VAR. But when you look at that play, not only it was so obvious, but it's just, there's got to be a lines where if you're a linesman and that if you're really unsure, like if you're unsure about the call, or that you might think that it's definitely clear and obvious and that I'm tempted to raise the flag, then just raise the flag. And what's even more interesting is that in the second half there was something very similar to this, where it was a very close offside call, and that one actually was closer than this offside call, and the linesman raised his flag. So why in the world in that incident where it was a close offside call, the linesman raised his flag, and then in this incident the linesman didn't raise his flag when it was so clear and obvious that it was an offside call? So that is something that I'm a little bit ticked off in terms of this, and I'm pretty sure Zlatan wasn't happy with the way that he thought he scored a goal, and then when he looked at the linesman, he realized, yeah, he raised his flag, and that he raised his flag right after he basically put that one into the back of the net. But to be fair, NYCFC, they were definitely the better team, and they would be pretty hard done if that one actually counted. And eventually they capitalized in terms of them being the better team in the first half, with Aber scoring to make it 1-0 in favor of NYCFC. Then NYCFC, of course, won a penalty after Altuna basically handballed it. They also go to VAR in that instant, and yes, it's definitely a handball. Altuna basically raised his hand up in an unnatural position. And by the way, next year, FIFA is going to be changing a rule where if a player basically, if the ball hits a player hand, then it's a handball whether or not if it's in a natural position or not. So if the rule, next year rule imply in this situation, there would be no debate in terms of whether or not if Altuna hands was in a natural position, because if the ball hits your hand, then it's going to be a handball. And then Morales, of course, put away the penalty, and I was shocked the fact that Morales was stepping up. Like, I don't know, like, why did they not learn from the past 2 penalty kick situation where Morales basically missed it, and that they had other option in terms of penalty kick taker in this team, and, I thought for sure that Morales was going to miss that. He almost did in this instant. I mean, Bingham did guess the right way, but fortunately, of course, he puts it away, and that at that point, it was 2-0 in favor of NYCFC. And in the second half, well, Zlatan, once again, for the second week in a row, or should I say maybe for the 1 millionth time in a row this season, got involved into an incident with an opposition player. So remember a couple of weeks ago when Zlatan basically got involved with Nadim and one of the RSL player, of the fact that, he kind of throw him down on the floor. Well, in this case, Zlatan basically kind of did a little bit of a chokehold on Sean Johnson, and Sean Johnson obviously was not happy about it. He basically kind of wrestled him to the ground, and then Sean Johnson also kind of did his best Atuesta kind of impression of just kind of holding his face, almost like he'd just been kind of scratched by someone. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's got to be a point where, I understand that Zlatan, this is the game that he plays, with the way way that he will get into opponent's mind, and that's something that he takes advantage of it. But it's getting to a point where there's got to be a fine line that said, well, with the way that what Zlatan has been kind of acting for the last couple of weeks, and with the way that he's kind of broken the rules of the fact that, when you hold a player in the neck, that is a hands to the face. I know some people might confuse with hands to the face with just the head. No, it also includes the neck. And if you basically put your hand into an opponent's neck or hand, then yeah, that is an automatic red card. But the reason why it's not an automatic red card is because of Zlatan. Zlatan obviously get the benefit of the doubt, and I just think that it's just getting to a point where if this happens every week, there's got to be a fine line where we have to do something about this. Like, this is definitely kind of ruining the league, and that it just feels like one famous player always gets the benefit of the doubt, and that he can do whatever he wants, whether it's violent or not, because he's a superstar. And that is something that MLS should definitely not be, in terms of how the league's supposed to handle this situation. But still, the Galaxy, of course, walk away. Still NYCFC walk away with 3 points. The Galaxy, of course, walk away with 3 straight losses in this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, the Galaxy had 14 shots compared to 12 that NYCFC had. 6 shots on goal compared to 1 that the Galaxy had. 3 shots off target compared to 9 that the Galaxy had. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 6 that the Galaxy had, and NYCFC had 59% possession compared to 41% possession. So, yeah, for the Galaxy, it seemed like they are just getting figured out, with the fact that teams have really now know that as long as if they stop Zlatan, then, yeah, they can, of course, shut down the Galaxy. And it's just getting to a point where they can't just keep relying on, just keep putting the ball up to Zlatan and hope that he can basically put the ball into the back of the net. I mean, it worked in the last couple of games, but eventually when teams find it out, you need to have a plan B, and you need another guy that can step up and score those goals. And right now, the Galaxy just clearly do not. And that, as long as if they don't have that option, then they are just going to continue to struggle. But moving on, in the next match is the other LA team, and the only Western Conference team that is able to win against an Eastern Conference team, which is LAFC, winning 3-0 against Columbus. And it's safe to say that LAFC basically is back, and that this was just an example of them being the best team in the league, and that this was also a classic example of class able to prevail at the end. In the first half, K scores from Blessing and Vela to make it 1-0 in favor of LAFC. Then LAFC make it 2-0 from Diamande, but before Diamande put this ball into the back of the net, there was some very bad things that happened, and very kind of laughable thing that happened before Dio basically put this one into the back of the net. So there was a mix-up between Jonathan Mensah and Bendik in this, where it seemed like Bendik was coming out to get the ball, and then Jonathan Mensah basically kind of headed back, not knowing that his goalkeeper was literally right next to him, and that basically gave that one away. And then Perez basically took that ball away because of the mix-up between Mensah and Bendik. And Perez had an open net to shoot. He was only 10 yards out. All he has to do is tap it in, and guess what he did? He basically hit the woodwork. I mean, I have seen a lot of bad misses in MLS, but that one is probably one of the worst, if not the worst misses that I have seen so far. Like, how in the world, when you're only 10 yards out and you have an empty net to shoot at, how in the world did you hit the crossbar there? Now, fortunately for him, Diamande, of course, were in the vicinity to basically clean up the mess. And then after that, Perez, he basically he come over Dio and say, my bad. And then Dio basically said, it's all good. I help you and clean up the mess for you and save you from a bit of embarrassment. But seriously, Josh Perez, how in the world did you not put that one away? But yeah, after that, it was 2-0, and then Vela basically puts the icing on the cake to make it 3-0 in favor of LAFC, which now extended his golden boot lead to now having 12 goals this season. I don't think the closest guy that is near the top of the Golden Boot standing, I believe, is Zlatan, and obviously Zlatan didn't score in this game, so he kind of extend that lead in terms of the Golden Boot race. But yeah, LAFC, they took care of business in this game, and in terms of the shots in this game, LAFC had 20 shots compared to 8 that Columbus had, 8 shots on goal compared to 1 that Columbus had, 8 shots off target compared to 4 that Columbus had, 4 shots blocked compared to 3 that Columbus had, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession. So it's safe to say LAFC is definitely back to being their best after kind of suffer a little bit of a blip of them only winning 1 out of the 4 games. And as for Columbus, it's frustrated the fact that you lost this game and you kind of got completely outclassed, but pretty much every team in the league so far this season has been outclassed by LAFC, so I guess no shame in terms of losing to them, and also no shame to losing the Man City of MLS, as Caleb Porter would mention of what exactly LAFC is. I mean, if LAFC is the Man City of MLS, I wonder who exactly is the Liverpool of MLS. Let me know in the comments below, who do you think is actually the Liverpool of MLS, or even like the Chelsea or Arsenal, or even the Tottenham of MLS, and most importantly, who exactly is the Manchester United of MLS? And I think the Manchester United of MLS has to be the Galaxy, because the Galaxy, they obviously have a history of winning trophies in the past. The same goes with Manchester United. They also have a history of spending a lot of money. Same with Manchester United. And also the fact that they are kind of stumbling in these last couple of years, just like the Galaxy kind of stumbling and kind of suffer a bit of a fall from grace in these last couple of seasons. But that being said, let me now switch the boards and talk about the last 6 games of this match week. But yeah, next up, there is a reason why I always say that the Quakes, I don't believe that they're going to make the playoffs this season. And even in this 4-game unbeaten streak that we had, and even though we looked very good and looked like a respectable MLS team in the past month, I still don't believe that they're going to make the playoffs, mainly because we're still in a rebuilding phase and that we are going to suffer those growing pains in the rebuilding phase. And also the fact that they're going to have performance like this and have nights like where they are playing against a team that they should beat, and that they're playing against a team that is bottom of the Eastern Conference and have been shipping goals like candy, and that there's been kind of a divide between the players and the front office and also the fans, and that they're basically just in a full crisis mode, and you would think that the Quakes should be able to get a win in this one. But nope. Instead, it was New England that was able to come up with a 3-1 victory in this game. Now, to be fair, I will say this. New England, they do have a interim head coach that is coming in after Brad Friedel, of course, got fired. And as I said with the FC Cincinnati versus Montreal game, anytime when you have an interim head coach come in, usually the players are going to be more energetic, and just it seemed like there's going to be more energy to the team because the players want to prove that their interim manager, that they are not lazy and that they are the one, they actually have some quality in them. And it kind of showed in the first 20 minutes, where I really thought that the first 20 minutes New England played some of the best soccer that they've been playing throughout the season, and they were rewarded by that when Agudelo scores from Castillo and Pineda to make it 1-0 in favor of New England. Then New England got a penalty, which Pineda of course puts it away, but this was a very questionable PK call. And, I was listening to the radio of this. I was listening to Ted Ramey doing the commentating in this. And, I heard that he said that it shouldn't have been a penalty. And when they look at VAR and confirmed it, he was kind of like, he couldn't believe it, the fact that it still stands. And, when I look back on the replay, yeah, I kind of had the same reaction of Ted Ramey, where I couldn't believe that's a penalty. Because when you look at this, Cummins, obviously, he kind of poked the ball away from Theo Bunbury from the back. And anytime when you basically try to get the ball from the back, there is a bit of a risk in that, because a player can just fall down very easily, which I thought that was the case in this instant, where it feels like Bunbury kind of being a little bit over dramatic and trying to sell to the referee that, yeah, he kind of went down even though Cummins got the ball. And Cummins also kind of put a hand off of Bunbury, which, some people say, well, he kind of shoved him off as he was trying to get the ball. But to me, it didn't look like he really shoved him very hard. And in many ways, I think the biggest evidence of the fact that he got the ball from behind, and it wasn't like he just lunged in and got the ball from behind. He basically got the ball from a standing tackle and just kind of poked it away. In my mind, that's not a penalty. I see more outrageous kind of situation like that was called a penalty, and I see many times whenever a player get the ball from a standing tackle, it's not a penalty. But the referee, of course, didn't agree with me and didn't think that it was not clear and obvious to change the call, because remember, originally this was called a penalty. And like I said, Panea basically puts it away to make it 2-0 in favor of New England. And, after the first half, the Quakes, they were definitely not playing very well. But I kind of had a feeling maybe they can come back in this game because, New England, in these past couple of months and also throughout the past couple of years, they always tends to give up late leads and have lapse of concentration in the second half. And, in the second half, we did start out pretty decently. We did had a couple of chances of cutting that deficit in half, but all the chances and all that hopes of a comeback was pretty much gone after Carlos Hill scores from Buchanan to make it 3-0. And Vaco, of course, got the consolation for us from Houston to make it 3-1. But yeah, unfortunately, at the end of the day, New England with a 3-1 victory, and the Quakes drop all 3 points in a game that you would think that it should be a very winnable game for them. Last season, even the 4-win Quakes team can able to get a result against New England, and we couldn't in this one. Now, in terms of the shots in this game, the Quakes had 13 shots compared to 11 that New England has. 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that New England has. 4 shots off target compared to 5 that New England has. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 3 New England has. And the Quakes had 73% possession compared to 27% possession. Now, obviously, when you look at the possession-wise and you look at all the line on the stats, you would think that the Quakes should be able to win this game. But I really think the reason why the Quakes didn't win this game, despite the fact that they dominated the possession, they controlled the game, and also they had more shots and more shots on goal than New England has. One of the biggest problems for the Quakes in this game was that they had no creativity going forward, and they were very slow. And this is where we really miss Espinoza, who, of course, got a red card in the last game, couldn't be able to be eligible to play this game. And with him being on the field, it seemed like he basically offered us that speed going forward on the attack, and when he is not there and not offering that speed going for us on the attack, we just look very slow and kind of out of idea, and that was the reason why we lost this game. We were not only not clinical going forward, but also we weren't really threatening New England in this game, and that credit to New England, they took their chances, and also our defense in this game. I've been saying our defense has been very iffy, and I won't put too much on the defense as the reason why we lost this game. I mean, I think the only goal that I will kind of question the defense is this first goal. I mean, this one, it's a very questionable call, probably shouldn't have been a penalty. And then the third goal that we conceded, it was an unfortunate deflection from Godoy that basically ends it into the back of the net. But still, the defense, it did not look good in this game, and I've been saying it looked iffy in the last couple of games, and the only reason why we've been getting away with it is because Daniel Vega has made some big save in the past couple of games. But that being said, let's move on into the next game, and that is the Chicago Fire, who is on fire right now. They won 2-0 against Minnesota, and in the first half, Gaetan scores from Frankowski to give them the 1-0 lead, and what a break this was. This attack started from the Chicago own half, and then they basically string a couple of passes, and then the next thing you know, there was 3 Chicago player that was going forward on the attack, and when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, something tells me that this could potentially be a chance where Chicago is going to get that goal, which eventually they did get that goal with Gaetan scoring to make it 1-0 in favor of the Fire. Then in the 34th minute, Ty double Chicago lead from Kapithoff to make it 2-0 in favor of Minnesota. Gaetan came off of an injury, and I think that's going to be something that's going to kind of be take a little bit off of this good victory that the Chicago Fire has, because Gaetan, he is a very important player in terms of their central attacking mid. Although, they do have a decent backup in Mihailovic in their team, so I don't think, even if Gaetan does miss a couple of games, and I heard that he is going to potentially miss a couple of games, I think with Mihailovic coming in, he should be providing something similar to what Gaetan provides to this team, and that the Chicago attack shouldn't be kind of stalled. In the second half, there was no score, as that was the final score of this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, Chicago had 15 shots compared to 5 that Minnesota has. 6 shots on goal compared to 2 that Minnesota had. 5 shots off target compared to 2 that Minnesota had. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that Minnesota has. And Chicago had 53% possession compared to 43% possession that Minnesota has. And, for Chicago, like I said, their attack has finally been clicking. And after I've been saying that how they've been pretty inconsistent in the last couple of games, they have been consistently good in terms of the attack and also on the defensive end too. I mean, this is now back-to-back shutout that they had, and ever since they got Francesco Calvo from Minnesota, they have been able to get those shutouts. So I'm guessing in some way Chicago probably are thanking Minnesota for giving them Calvo and helping them to beat Calvo's former team. But as for Minnesota, yeah, right now, as much as the defense has been a lot better than it was in the beginning of the season, there is now a new problem with this Minnesota team, which is goals. They can't score goals right now. The goal well seems to be dry with this team, and knowing how much talent they have going forward, I'm actually kind of surprised the fact that Minnesota is kind of suffering a bit of a goal drought in this. And I think maybe this has to do with the fact that Quintero is not in this game. I saw the lineup for this game, and Quintero, of course, was not in this one. So I'm guessing with him missing there, maybe they missed him in terms of that attack. But otherwise, Minnesota in these last couple of games, they've only scored 1 goal in these last 3 games. So yeah, they're started to finding themselves a little bit of a trouble in terms of scoring goals and also creating some chances going forward, as they only generated 5 shots in this game. And this just felt like this feels like kind of a old Minnesota team where whenever they go on the road, they just cannot get anything done. But yeah, moving on is the Rocky Mountain Cup between RSL and the Rapids, and in the end, it was RSL winning the Rocky Mountain Cup by a final score of 3-2. And for the Rapids, this game looked very similar to last week, where they went down 2-0 in the first half. They got a goal right before halftime, then get another goal at the beginning of the second half, only to give the lead back to their opponent and eventually lose this game 3-2. In the first half, Rusnak scores on a penalty, and this was a very controversial penalty, and I thought it was a very soft penalty because it looked like it was a shoulder-to-shoulder challenge between Anderson and also who was that RSL player that was involved in this? I can't really think of my top of my... Herrera. Yeah, it was a kind of a shoulder-to-shoulder kind of challenge between Anderson and Herrera, and even the announcer said that, yeah, that looked like a shoulder-to-shoulder challenge. I don't see anything wrong with this, and I kind of agree. I've seen before where when you have shoulder-to-shoulder challenge like that, it's not called a penalty. And remember, originally, they didn't call this a penalty, but apparently the referee thought that there was some conclusive evidence of the fact that that was not shoulder-to-shoulder, and that was a penalty, and that's why it was given. And obviously, Colorado fans are not going to be happy with that. But I'm going to get to later on that, they also had a very favorable penalty kick call late in the game that maybe will kind of evens out what happened with this penalty call. But like I said, Rusnak puts it away to make it 1-0 in favor of RSL. And then Corey Bear scores, yes, his first goal from Nick Beasler in the 27th minute to make it 2-0 in favor of RSL. And you know how big of a fan I am with Corey Bear. And anytime I see him score or even just get on the board, it makes me very, very happy. Like, after what happened in this resort, when I found out that Corey Bear scored, I almost forgot the fact that the Quakes lost, and that I'm actually very stoked the fact that I see him score a goal. I mean, I just love this kid, and I just love the way that he play, and that he definitely have a good potential of being a very good striker in this league. And then in the 3rd minute of stoppage time, right before the halftime whistle, Acosta scores to cut the deficit to 1 for Colorado. And then coming out of the half, Danny Wilson actually scored his first ever goal to tie the game up at 2-2. And, Danny Wilson, obviously, he's a defender. You're not going to expect him to score a lot of goal. And I believe this goal was coming off of a corner, and it was a good delivery where Danny Wilson was in the right place, right time to basically slot that one home to make it 2-2. And, just like last week when Colorado get it back to 2-2, I thought, okay, maybe they can eventually get something out of this game. But then 6 minutes later, Sam Johnson scored to make it 3-2 in favor of RSL. And then Colorado had a chance to equalize just 4 minutes later, and this is where I get to where they also got a very favorable penalty kick where it looked like there was really nothing on that penalty. I mean, I believe it was Nicholson and Toya. Toya basically, it looked like he kind of brought down Nicholson, but I thought Nicholson kind of went down a little bit too easily. And even the Rapids announcer said they didn't say this, but they kind of looked surprised the fact that it was a penalty, because in my mind, it wasn't. It looked like Nicholson just kind of fall off on the ground. There was not really a lot of contact from Toya. But Colorado, of course, gets that penalty, but unfortunately, Kai Kamara misses it. I mean, he was trying to put it right down the middle, but it did not fool the RSL goalkeeper one bit. And yeah, that was a big chance to tie the game up once again. But in the end, that was the final score of this one, as RSL, of course, prevails and win 3-2 in this one. In terms of the shots in this game, it was pretty even. 16 shots compared to 15 that RSL had. 6 shots on goal compared to 7 that RSL had. 7 shots off target compared to 5 that RSL has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and RSL had 56% possession compared to 44% possession that Colorado has. So, for RSL, it's a good win for them, but, it's against Colorado. I mean, anybody can get a resort and get all 3 points against Colorado this day, because Colorado, they have now gone winless in 11 games, and I believe I heard that they have now actually break the record for the longest winless run to start the season. Yeah, it's a miserable time for the Rapids when they decide to break a record for the wrong reason. And I really feel bad for a Rapids fan of the fact that there was so much promise coming into this season, and it feels like it has just gone a whole lot worse than what it has been so far. So, yeah, moving on into the next match is going to be Seattle getting a 1-0 victory against the Dynamo, and for the second week in a row, Christian Roldan might win goal of the week again. Actually, I don't know if he won goal of the week last week when he scored that goal against Minnesota, but this one was equally as impressive as the one that he scored against Minnesota, where he basically kind of chest that one down and then just absolutely blazed that one off the volley to make it 1-0 in favor of the Sounders. And then there was chances by both teams to potentially score. There was chances for Seattle to add on to that 1-0 lead. There was chances for Houston to to get the equalizer. Probably the best chance for Houston was that when there was a ball that was coming into the box and Elise was just wide open in the box. He had a free header, and for some reason he didn't really connect to that ball very well from his head, and it kind of like bounced on the ground, and Stefan Fry basically made a pretty easy save on that. And yeah, in the end, of course, it was a 1-0 game. And in terms of the shots in this game, Seattle had 16 shots compared to 11 that Houston has. 4 shots on goal compared to 1 that Houston has. 10 shots off target compared to 6 that Houston has. 5 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Sounders has. And possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 46% possession that Houston has. So for the Sounders, they finally got a win after they've been kind of in a little bit of a blip in the last couple of games, and they got a good win against a Houston side that has been very good this season. And as for Houston, they'll be disappointed that they lost this one and didn't get a point out of this one, but they're playing against a Sounders team that is one of the best team in the league, and there's really no shame the fact that they weren't able to get all 3 points in this game. And at least during this tough stretch that they are in right now, they are actually still getting some points and getting enough points where they're still in the conversation of actually finish top 4 in the playoff spot and even finish in the top half of the table. So yeah, moving on, in the next match is going to be Atlanta, who also won 1-0 against Orlando City. And Pity Martinez, after all this talk about how he was being very frustrated, the fact that he's not performing for Atlanta, and that a couple of games ago when he was subbed off, he was kicking the chair, he was showing his frustration in front of the camera, and that it just feel like this goal drought that he is in, and also this assist drought that he is in, is starting to get to him. And in the last game, he came so close of getting his first goal from the free kick. And I thought that might potentially kind of like, it feels like it might even have got to him where, yeah, something tells me it's going to take even longer now for him to potentially score a goal. But that was not the case, because in this game, he finally broke that streak when he scored in the 14th minute from Villalba. I said Pity Pity finally got on the board for the first time this season. And let's just hope that with him finally getting his first goal of the season, this will kind of open the floodgates and give him confidence, the fact that he can score a couple of more goals. I mean, I know Pity Martinez is not a striker, and I know he's not supposed to be kind of a player that scores goals. He's supposed to be the player that is kind of being a creative player, gives the ball to Joseph Martinez to basically puts it into the back of the net. But knowing now that he has finally got a goal and he contributed to the team's success and also was the reason why they won this game, I think this will really give him a lot of confidence. And you can see in his celebration what that really means to him, knowing how bad that he really wants to get a goal or even an assist to get his MLS career kind of stats line open. But yeah, that of course gave Atlanta a 1-0 lead, but Orlando City, they kind of hung around in this game, and Atlanta, despite the fact that they had a couple of decent chances of getting that second goal, they couldn't find it. And in the second half, I actually didn't mention this, they actually scored the second goal from Gresso, but that goal of course was called back because of offside. And then Atlanta, in the last 10 minutes, they just looked tired in the last 10 minutes. And it just felt like they were just hanging on for dear life. And Orlando City was they absolutely took control of this game in the last 10 minutes. And I really thought that Orlando City was going to get that equalizer. But unfortunately, as it's been the case throughout the season, whenever Orlando City had chances of getting equalizer late in the game, they could not find that one. And that cardiac catch, while it has worked maybe once or twice this season, it hasn't really always kind of worked for Orlando City, and it was the case again where they just could not find that equalizer, and Atlanta survived in this game, winning 1-0 in this one. In terms of the shots in this game, Atlanta had 13 shots compared to 10 that Orlando City has, 5 shots on goal compared to 4 that Orlando City has, 7 shots off target compared to 3 that Orlando City has, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 3 that Orlando City has, and Atlanta had 62% possession compared to 38% possession that Orlando City has. So, like I said, for Orlando City, they'll be very frustrated that they didn't get anything out of this, despite how much pressure that they put on Atlanta in the second half. And as for Atlanta, they got a midweek game this week against Vancouver, and it's a road game, so that they have to travel all the way across the other side of the country for that. And something tells me Frank de Boer's got to change his team. Like, that last 10 minutes, there was a lot of tired legs out there in that Atlanta team, and I just think there is no way in the world. I'll be shocked that Frank de Boer in the next game against Vancouver, he would put out the same starting 11 as this one, because his players are absolutely gas, and that, since Atlanta, they have been, this week they played 3 games in 7 days, and during this stretch they're playing a lot of games and have games in the midweek. Yeah, guys are going to get tired out, and it is really time for him to kind of just switch things around and really maybe even decide to put in a B team in there, because right now Atlanta, they have definitely got back to where they are right now, but still, that fatigue level is starting to take a toll on them, and I really hope Frank de Boer do the right thing in the midweek game where he just do not start the same starting 11. If he start the same starting 11 in this game against Vancouver, I guarantee you that Atlanta is probably going to lose that game too, because the guys that they have on the team is just absolutely fatigued. So after this one. But moving on into the final game of this week is going to be DC, who also got a 1-0 win against Sporting KC. And, in the first half, there was no score, and there wasn't really a lot of chances. Most of the chances in the first half really come on the set piece. And then in the second half, Ariola scores from Rooney to make it 1-0 in favor of DC. This was actually a really lovely goal from Ariola. Basically just kind of curls one into the top right corner. But at the same time, where in the world was the closing down from Sporting KC? Like, the fact that Ariola got so much space, and I think it was Hazard that basically gave him that space to shoot that one. You have to close him down, because Ariola, we know he can do that. We know he can just bend one in, and it can basically puts into the back of the net, and that is exactly what happened in this situation. And that, of course, was the final score of this game. As Sporting KC, they did have their chances and had moments to potentially get a goal. I mean, I remember late in the game, they actually had a one-on-one opportunity after one of the DC United players basically slipped. Because remember, in the second half, it was raining very hard at Audi Field, and the service was very slippery. And Christian Nemeth was one-on-one with Bill Hamid. And although Christian Nemeth kind of had a bit of a tight angle, the fact that he put that one in the side netting, yeah, that was pretty bad. And that just kind of sums up in terms of SKC season so far. And in the end, they of course walk out of Audi Field once again without anything. And in terms of the shots in this game, DC had 15 shots compared to 11 that Sporting KC had. Both teams had 4 shots on goal, 3 shots off target compared to 5 that SKC had, 8 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that SKC has. Possession-wise, dead even at 50%. And, for Sporting KC, again, they're going to be very frustrated that they didn't get anything out of this. If they would have got a point out of this, I think they would be really happy, considering, the injury crisis that they have. They just need to survive these next couple of weeks, and maybe even these next month or so before they started to get back healthy, because it's clear that with this team that they're putting in right now, and with so much guy that is injured with this team, it just shows you how this team, there could be maybe a possibility that they might not be able to make the playoffs. And that I'm hoping once they get most of their guys back, they can maybe do something that DC and Seattle did last season, have a second half resurgence. because we know that if Sporting KC is fully healthy, this team is one of the best team in the league. And as for DC, you know, it wasn't a pretty victory, but they'll take the 3 points. They're now tied with Philly in the top of the Eastern Conference. And yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much all the games I have reviewed it for MLS Matchweek number 13, or number 12 actually. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these games, and what do you think are the most surprising result out of this week, and what do you think about how your team did this week in MLS Matchweek number 12. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.